Hello and welcome back. In this session, we are going to look at your Elastic IPs. We will look at an introduction to your Elastic IPs, and then we'll also look at an example as to how you can work with your Elastic IPs. Now, in the last session, we looked at an introduction to your security groups. Understanding what your security groups are, and then we also looked at how you can work with your security groups. We also discussed a bit about the characteristics that we have for your security groups. Now, in this session, we will start working with your Elastic IPs. Once again, before we start off with the session, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Now, what are Elastic IPs? Now, before we talk about your Elastic IPs, now whenever we launch your EC2 instances, and if the instance has a public IP associated with that, so there's a public IP associated over here. Now, if you stop and start the instance, what happens is this public IP will be lost. Okay, so let's say, for example, I'll copy this IP and I will keep it over here. All right, so this is the Elastic IP I have. Now, if I stop this instance, let me stop this instance. So for some reason, maybe you want to change the instance type. Okay, so if you want to change the instance type, we will need to stop the EC2 instance. Now here the instance is stopping. So let's wait for the instance to be stopped. So here the instance is stopped, and if you see the IP address, it is lost. Okay, the IP address will be gone. It is no longer available. And then let's start this instance once again. All right, so now what will happen here is AWS will allocate a new public IP address to this instance. All right, so let's wait. This will take few seconds, and just waiting for the IP address to be available. Still the instance state, it is in the pending state. So let's wait for that. All right, so now my instance is in the running status, and here is the new IP address. So now if you look at this, the IP address has changed. All right, so this is the default behavior. Okay, whenever you launch an EC2 instance that has a public IP associated with that, and if you stop and start the instance once again, the IP address will change. Now, is this a problem? Yes, that's going to be a problem. Imagine you have an application running in this server, and you're using this IP address to access that. And if the IP address change, then the users are impacted. Likewise, if you have multiple users who are accessing this server, and if the IP address change, then again the users will be impacted. They won't be able to access the server. Now, how do we handle this? And this is where your Elastic IPs comes into the picture. So an Elastic IP, it helps you with a static IPv4 address, which can be used for your dynamic cloud computing. So this will generate a static IP address which will never change irrespective of the state of your EC2 instance. So the Elastic IP address is allocated to your AWS account, and it is yours until you release it. So with this, what happens is AWS will allocate Elastic IP address to you, and it will be with your account as long as you want it. Now, by using this Elastic IP address, one advantage is obviously having a static IP address. The other advantage you have is you can also mask the failure of an EC2 instance. So let's say you have an EC2 instance and there's an Elastic IP associated with this instance. Now, for some reason, let's say this instance is corrupted, or you're no longer able to access the application has let's say failed, you're not application is not loading. Now what we can do is we can quickly launch a new instance and associate the same Elastic IP address to that instance. So as a user, nothing has changed, but in the backend we are now running the application on a new server. So by using an Elastic IP address, you can mask the failure of an instance or software by rapidly remapping the address to another instance in your account. So this Elastic IP address, it's a public IPv4 address which is reachable from the internet. So you can access this IP address from the internet. It is reachable from the internet. And if your instance does not have a public IPv4 address, then you can make use of this Elastic IP address to associate it with your instance so that it can enable the communication with the internet. So if you want to give that internet access to your instances over the internet, we can make use of your Elastic IPs for that. Now, to ensure the efficient use of these Elastic IP addresses, there is a small hourly charge which AWS imposes if the Elastic IP address is not associated with a running instance. So as long as the Elastic IP address is associated with a running instance, there's no cost. But if it is not associated with any running instance, or if it is associated with an stopped instance, or it is unattached, it is not associated with any instance at all, then there is a small hourly cost that you will have to pay. So basically you'll have to pay money for this depending on the usage. Now, while your instance is running, you're not charged for one Elastic IP address associated with the instance. So you have the option of associating multiple Elastic IP addresses with your instance. Now, if you do that, you don't have to pay money only for the first Elastic IP address. You will have to pay money for the other Elastic IP addresses, even if it is associated with a running instance. You're not going to be charged only for the first Elastic IP address as long as it is associated with a running instance. All right, so you'll be charged for any additional Elastic IP addresses associated with the instance. Now, let's see an example for this. So here I have my instance. Now, we just saw an example as to how the IP address changed. So how do we overcome that? So first step would be to create an Elastic IP address. So again, under this network and security, you can go to Elastic IPs. And first thing you'll have to do is you'll have to allocate an Elastic IP address. So just click on allocate Elastic IP address and click on allocate. This will go ahead and create an Elastic IP address for that. Now we have created this Elastic IP, and right now I will get charged for this because it is not associated with any instance. So you need to associate this with an instance, and the instance should be in the running status. Right, so let's go to actions, and here you should be able to see this associate Elastic IP address, and you can choose your instance, to which instance you want to associate, and then just click on associate. Now the Elastic IP address is associated with that EC2 instance. Right, now if I go back to that instance, I should be able to see the Elastic IP address. All right, so here you can see how it is highlighted, the hyperlink. Here also you can see the Elastic IP. So right now we are making use of the Elastic IP address. Now let's go ahead and stop this instance, and now you will see that even if I stop the instance, the public IP will not be lost. All right, so it is static. No matter what you do with the instance, whether you stop the instance, you start the instance, no matter what you do, the IP address would remain the same. So that's the one advantage you have with your Elastic IP. So if you want to maintain a static IP address with your instances, we make use of your Elastic IPs for that. And the other advantage is obviously the failover. So if this instance gets corrupted or fails for some reason, we can launch a new instance and simply associate the Elastic IP with the new instance. Now here you can see the instance has stopped and I still have the public IP. Okay, it is still the same. And if I start this instance once again, it would still remain the same. So this is where your Elastic IPs are useful. So once again, whenever you want to maintain a static IP addresses for your instances, we make use of your Elastic IPs for that. Right, so waiting for this instance state to change. It is still pending. All right, so now this is in the running state, and you can see the IP address, it would still remain the same. So that's the advantage of your Elastic IPs. Now let's talk a bit of the characteristics that we have for your Elastic IP. So the Elastic IP address is static. It does not change over time. So that's the main feature you have with your Elastic IPs. It's constant. Okay, it is static. It is not going to change over a period of time. An Elastic IP address is for use in a specific region only, and cannot be moved to a different region. So your Elastic IPs are region specific. All right. So whatever we create in North Virginia will stay in North Virginia only. You cannot move this to a different region. Then an Elastic IP address comes from Amazon's pool of IPv4 addresses or from a custom IPv4 address pool that you have brought to your AWS account. So whenever you're creating, you're allocating, you're by default using the Amazon's pool of IP addresses. Now you can use your own custom IP addresses, but I don't have any, so it does not show the option. It is grayed out. As of now, you're using the Amazon's pool of IPv4 addresses. Now to use an Elastic IP address, first you need to allocate one to your account and then associate it with your instance or a network interface. So you need to first allocate an Elastic IP address and then associate it with your EC2 instance. To dissociate Elastic IP address, a dissociated Elastic IP address remains allocated to your account until you explicitly release it. Now, let's say you no longer want this Elastic IP address. All right. So the first thing you will have to do is you'll have to dissociate this Elastic IP address. Now, dissociating the Elastic IP address does not release the Elastic IP. This Elastic IP is still associated with your account. So you'll have to explicitly release this from your account, only then you will not get charged. So AWS imposes a small hourly charge for Elastic IP addresses that are not associated with a running instance. So now we have dissociated it. It is not associated with any instance, but this is still in my account. All right. So AWS will impose a small hourly charge for this. Now, how do you release this? You can go to actions and here you should see this release Elastic IP address, and this will put the IP address back to Amazon's pool, and I will no longer get charged for this. All right. So these are some of the characteristics that you should remember when we talk about your Elastic IPs. That's all I have for this session. So once again, we looked at an introduction to your Elastic IPs. We looked at an example. We also discussed about the characteristics about your Elastic IPs. That's all I have for this session. Thank you. Once again, before you leave, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you like the video, leave a like and please share the video.